I've done it. I've gone and bought myself a Leica. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to just reflect, sit down and think about and discuss my journey in photography, where I've been, where I've come from, and ultimately how I've ended up at this point. Winding the clock back, I picked up my first camera at 16 or 17. It was a Canon EOS 650. I undertook a part-time course in photography at the local college, and then at 18 found myself in the Air Force as a photographer. I'm very fortunate in that the photographic training within the RAF is incredibly technical, and I find myself using every piece of equipment imaginable, from the SLRs of the 70s and 80s and 90s, so your F3s, your 4s and your F5s, Hasselblad 120s, as well as moving into the digital world in the early 2000s with the Nikon D1, D2 and D3s. So I'm very fortunate to have had a wide range of experience with different photographic kit. After my time in the Air Force, I found myself as a press photographer, and the continuation of the Nikon D Pro line was the obvious thing. However, in 2010 or so, I was no longer a professional photographer, and I found myself in that career change falling out of love with photography. So fast forwarding to about 2 or 3 years ago, I found myself getting pangs for photography again and wanting to get out and take pictures. So I set off on a journey to find a camera that would help me do that. The Fujifilm X-T5 had quite literally just been released, and to me this was the perfect gateway back into photography. It had and has everything I need to take pictures. The primary drivers for this camera were the tactile feel, the manual dials, the slower form of an act of capturing photography, capturing your images. Realistically, I've probably used 10% of the features available on this camera. And I guess that's kind of the point. It has been a fantastic stepping stone for me to get back into photography as a hobby. But realistically, there are so many features on this that I do not use. 18 months, 2 years later, I find myself hunting for that next move. Just for example, I've got no need or desire for autofocus. I've got no need or desire for any video features. This screen, just to me, is a distracting tool. It just gets in the way of me taking pictures. I find myself taking more pictures than I normally would. So whilst a great camera and a fantastic stepping stone for me back into photography, the next evolution for my photography about 9 months ago was the purchase of this fantastic condition Nikon FM2. The Nikon FM2 is a semi-pro SLR from the early 80s. It's built like a tank, much like the X-T5 takes its design cues. It is a fully manual tactile process of capturing your images. Of course, on the Nikon FM2, it's a film camera, so there is no screen, and I guess that step back into the film world was the next step that I took into realizing more what I wanted from my photography. So for the past 6 to 9 months, the Nikon FM2 has been my primary camera, and I've loved every second of it. Yet I'm now looking for that next evolution. In some ways, it's the devolution. In the Nikon FM2, I immediately removed the battery. So I've been shooting this without a light meter from day one. And I guess that's the point. The next natural evolution for me is going to photography as simple as it can be. So the next obvious step is, of course, the Leica M-A. So the Leica M-A, for those who might not know, is a purely mechanical camera, rangefinder camera from Leica. It does not have any electronics. It does not have a battery. It does not have a light meter. It is purely mechanical in nature. It's a film camera. And for me, it is the next logical step in my evolution with my photography. Prior to receiving this yesterday, I've never actually held a Leica camera. I've never shot a rangefinder camera. So there is slight risk in that. And let's be frank about this. This is an incredibly luxurious purchase. The Nikon FM2 does exactly what this M-A does without the light meter. It is basically the exact same tool. However, I find myself drawn to this camera because it's as pared down and as simple as you could get with photography, and ultimately that's the journey I've been on for the past 2 to 3 years since buying the X-T5. So the plan for me is explore this camera, explore the M-A, explore Leica. I've paired this purchase with a Voigtlander Colorscope RF 2.8 28mm. I didn't see the need to buy a Leica lens. Reality is, this is my first foray into rangefinder cameras. 90% of the shots are going to be out of focus, so spending 7-8 times more on a lens just doesn't make sense. Yeah, plan is to shoot purely on this Leica for the next 6 months. I've purchased a bunch of Tri-X, the classic film paired with the Leica M-A, and the plan is to shoot purely on Tri-X on the M-A to really begin to understand the Leica rangefinder system and use it effectively, begin to understand Tri-X, the film, and ultimately take me on the next step of my journey with photography. The thing about the Leica M-A is its lack of features are its features to me. It does everything I need from a camera, and it doesn't do anything I don't need. On paper, this is the perfect camera for me. Only time will tell if that rings true. And I think ultimately the reason I decided to bite the bullet and buy a brand new Leica M-A is ultimately, for me, this is a lifelong purchase. And there's something nice and beautiful about knowing that every scratch, every dent, every ding, every mark caused by me with this camera is me, and it tells a story of my time with this camera. I hope I fall in love with this camera, and I can genuinely foresee this camera. Well, this camera will almost certainly outlive me, but I love the idea of this camera being handed down to my son as a heirloom, if you will. It telling my story and me telling my stories with it. It's There's something beautiful about having such a, let's face it, an incredibly well made bit of kit, joining me for the rest of my life, and then being handed down to the next generation with my marks left on it. So really excited to get going with this. I've already put a roll of film in it, and I'm a few frames in, just playing about. Incredibly excited for the next 6 months and the next 30, 40 years of shooting this. I'll probably make a video in a few months' time as I get to grips with it, share my thoughts on where I'm at with it. But ultimately, this is the start of what is hopefully my next phase, and not necessarily final phase, of my photography journey.